Guys, so much happens in episode 4, aptly titled Crash Into You, because crash. But I think the car crash
I just got it.
No!
Me too. Don't feel bad. Okay, Crash Into You is this an episode where Haley convinces Lucas to go with the team to a party at Nathan's beach house, hoping that the guys will become friendlier.
Good luck.
Which obviously is not going to happen.
I think the car crash of my heart is our finally being able to see Deb Scott, Barbara Alyn Woods.
She is such a babe.
Such a babe and such a good mom. Such a good mom. Like really trying to, she sees the problem with her son. She doesn't quite know how to fix it, but she sees it and she's not just like going along with every craziness that Dan is showing us.
Well, and how like Dan Scott has been situated firmly in this show. So to find a woman to go toe to toe with him, but also still like kiss him in the kitchen, She is able to do that with such ease, you know, and she came into a cast that was already working together.
Yeah.
That's right.
And they did such a beautiful job of establishing. I forgot that there was intimacy between Dan and Deb. Like the way they hug each other in the kitchen and he goes, "Oh, is that my wife?" And there's this whole dynamic. And Barb played so many levels in this episode so flawlessly to have that romance with him, to challenge him, to be observing her changing teenage son. Oh my God, when she calls him surly.
Yeah.
Surly.
Do you feel like our parents ever said that about us?
She's surly.
These surly teenagers.
It was a tall order for the character of Deb, though, to be able to walk that line, to toe that line of understanding why this woman would have married and stayed with this man, and yet having her be sympathetic and watching her walk into Karen's cafe and handle that situation and just extend that olive branch in the sort of awkward way that, she did and that grown-ups would. It's tough.
Yeah, I feel like I could see when she walked in and she's like, "A coffee. Oh, and a biscotti." And then she goes to leave and you're like, "Oh no, she's losing it. She's losing it. She's chickening out." And then they suddenly have this beautiful conversation. I mean, really what we are is the Barbara Alyn Woods fan club.
Big time.
These are facts. Facts. She wears the pants in this episode, which, watching it as an adult lady now, I'm like, yeah, girl. You just put those britches on.
As an adult, what hit me was their whole conversation when she talks about how Nathan is obviously suffering or struggling, and Dan tries to blame her and says it's because you're working and you're gone. And she says, "I'm gone at max 10 days a month." And he's pressuring her, if you were home, if you spent more time with him. And she claims her identity, her career, that she deserves to have both, to be a mom, to have a job, to be working, to travel. Like she really defends herself as an individual woman who's also a mother. And I didn't catch that in 2003.
No, I didn't either. But she did. She did such a badass job of that.
Well, and the only two people that see Nathan's vulnerabilities ever are Deb and Haley. I mean, the scenes going from scene to scene where he's so sweet with you, Joy. Oh my God, you and him in the car are just darling.
And then to see him become such a jackass in the next scene, but it just showed what we were saying when we were watching back was that it's only James could do this, because James intrinsically is just such a great person, such a good man, that he managed to play this character that was such a jerk and so confused because of what he's been taught by his parents, and yet still be vulnerable. And it was still kind of manipulative. He was using his vulnerability, even though he was being honest, to manipulate Haley, but it doesn't come off as sociopathic.
Yeah.
He just comes off as confused. Because I think a lot of guys, I mean, think about the guys that are like on TV right now or whatever in those shows, like it would have been hard to cast someone.
Absolutely.
Like that.
And I think if you'd cast someone who in real life was a dick or was a manipulator,
right,
there would have been no redemption for Nathan, and James bringing himself to that part and his kindness and his groundedness it's like you could see through the Nathan Scott armor. And and in a way, it let him play someone who was cruel better than I've seen most villains be villains.
Yeah. Yeah. I felt bad for him.
Mm-hmm.
It's the Brooke thing from last episode. You know, it's like, here's all my bravado. I'm going to be real hard and I'm going to say things that are shocking. And then also, but inside, I just want somebody to hug me. These are kids that didn't get hugged enough.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
And there's something about that. Oh, God. Like, talk about a cringe moment in this episode. You know, the game ends and then Nathan invites Lucas to this party, right? We think it's an olive branch and everybody's there. And you know, Haley and Lucas show up in the tow truck and, all, you know, there's the pretend meet and we're like, oh, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? And then we start playing Never Have I Ever.
Did you guys actually play that in high school?
No, I don't think so. I had never really been to a house party. I think once in my life. I had an interesting childhood. But
You were in Manhattan drinking champagne, Joy.
Yeah, you were like a working actor.
Not when I was 15 and 16. I was still like in high school, just normal neighborhood kid. And I hadn't been to, I remember shooting that scene and being like, oh, so this is what a house party feels like.
What was your like typical weekend in high school? Like, what'd that look like for each of you guys?
I just hung out with friends and I was usually involved in some kind of theater or something was going on with the arts. Ride my bike. I mean, my parents it was very 80s parenting. Like, go here, here's a stick, here's your bike, here, like, go outside and play.
Here's a stick. So what were you kids doing out in California? Were you guys going to like beach parties?
No. Oh my gosh, that's like so funny to me. I rarely ever went to the beach. Once my family was in Pasadena, it's just like traffic here is horrible. But similarly, Joy, you know, I was doing a lot of theater. And so I was always, you know, in a play, at a rehearsal, and my school was so small, and being an all-girls school, you know, we didn't bring boys from the all-boys schools in the neighborhood in, so we played all the parts. Yeah, the girls played everything. Our theater director.
My God, Sophia, that informs so much about who you are.
It does.
Tell me more.
Did you play Did you play any of the boy parts?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I like slicked back my hair like Charlotte in that Sex and the City episode when she gets her portrait taken like a man.
That's so awesome.
Oh, I loved
I'm into it.
I loved it. And it was actually really interesting. We had this incredible theater director, this man named Tim Wright, who is unfortunately no longer with us, who honestly changed my life and taught me so much about storytelling. And, you know, he taught us about historical Shakespeare and how at the time it was thought to be scandalous to have a woman in the theater. So back then the men played women's parts.
Right.
And he was talking about this sort of, you know, honestly reclamation of the theatrical space with all of us as women playing all these parts and doing all the tech and learning how to light. And I was the prop master on so many plays and it was so fun. And then my senior year, we kind of had a more typical experience. All of a sudden, I think because people finally had driver's licenses and, you know, we all finally could be mobile. And we started like one of my friends and I started dating these two best friends. I'd been in love with my, you know, childhood sweetheart from camp since I was 9. And then my senior year in high school, I started dating this boy. He looked exactly like Paul Walker. Good God. And him and his best friend went to an all boys school on the West Side. And so then it was like, oh, we're going to see our boyfriends at a West Side party tonight. And we were so innocent and silly, but we felt like grown-ups. Like the way I think we were saying we felt when we got to Wilmington and we look back and we're like, oh my God, we were babies, but like we thought we knew what we were doing. My senior year in high school, I was like, I am like officially a teenager. I didn't know anything, but I would go to we would have these house parties that the boys would throw and we felt so cool. And really we just stood around and like everyone was staring at each other trying to figure out who was going to talk first.
Yeah.
What do we do now?
What do we do now? How does this work?
Virginia was all house parties, you guys. Like football games, basketball games. Like, I don't know. Did we do it for soccer in the spring? Probably not. track team. Oh, the track team was hot.
Wait, track team had parties?
Girl,
I don't know anything about this.
Any excuse, right?
Wow.
Any excuse in Virginia to have a house party. It was happening. And so, like, yeah, a lot of house parties. I remember, like, my boyfriend in high school was a bad kid. And I remember being in a basement and someone was smuggling alcohol through the basement window. And
like those little narrow windows at the top?
Yep. Mm-hmm. Me being the clean teen at the party and like head of the clean team, I'm like, who is doing this? And it's my boyfriend. And we like went into the tree house in the backyard and had a very like Nathan Haley conversation where I was like, what are you doing? Are you just trying to be cool for these people? And he was like, babe, I'm only drinking orange juice. And now I know it was like totally spiked with vodka.
Totally.
But at the time I'm like, oh, well, I guess that's not so bad. But when we shot this stuff, I remember being all high on my horse, like, why are all the lights on? This is a dumb party. You know? Why are we walking around in broad daylight? This is crazy.
You knew. Well, you know what? And I have to say, the star of the episode was Peyton. Peyton was the star of this episode for me.
Hell yeah.
Because in that same way of knowing, of just like having the ability to see beyond what's going on directly around you. But I don't know a lot of kids that were that introspective in high school and capable of asking questions like, are we going to turn out like Deb and Karen? I mean, what high schooler has the wherewithal to ask themselves that question? And I love that about Peyton. I think that's one of the major things that the audience connected with about her.
And the wherewithal as well in that breakup scene with Nathan to stand so firmly in yourself, and he's trying to, do the like, oh, baby, I'm sorry business. And when you say, you basically call Nathan out for his behavior with Haley, and you say, whatever you're doing there is messed up. And if you aren't doing something there, it's messed up. Essentially because you're stringing her along. And for a girl in high school to look at her boyfriend and say, you're either flirting with that girl for real or you're flirting with her to manipulate her, and either way, you're a bad guy. That's not something, especially in that era, that we were encouraged to do. It was like, who's flirting with my boyfriend? It wasn't, maybe he's a bad dude.
I wonder what made them strike that tone in this episode, because Deb is not threatened or weirded out by Karen, and Peyton's not threatened or weirded out by Haley. They were clearly trying to make a strong note about, like, we're not in competition with one another.
I love that.
It's such a beautiful thing. And then I'm like, well, what happened? How did it go sideways? When did we start calling each other whores as like terms of endearment?
Man.
I don't know.
On the show,
it's a weird deal. The whole like vibrator thing made us all like,
so gross.
Ooh, barf.
Were you like that in high school though, Hilarie? With that introspective and the ability to stand up and tell people what's what, and I mean, was that in you?
I was super confrontational. I think that the things that were more important to me in high school were, like the movie Boys Don't Cry came out, and Girl Interrupted came out, and I read The Bell Jar. And so there was like a firestorm of teenage girl mental health, also like gay straight alliance kind of stuff. All of that stuff was very important to me. And I knew that I was leaving for New York, so it didn't matter who I pissed off. And
nice.
And I feel like Peyton has her friendship with Brooke, but isn't really connected to anyone else. So might also carry a lot of that, like, we don't care who we piss off.
Yeah. It's interesting because I realized that, and this is something I've been, learning to expand for myself even as an adult. But when I think back, it's always been really easy for me on behalf of others to not care who I piss off, to defend people, to stand up for people, but not to do it for myself. And I think I really see some of that in Brooke. We were all talking about this after the last episode. I think, Hilarie, you said it. You said, I always got the sense that Brooke was actually a virgin. And I think so too. And I think that what resonated with me about her was a girl who only was taught to validate herself by other people's opinions and by charming other people and by being attractive to boys. And so she would make herself the butt of the joke. Like she bit on the vibrator joke, and then that's a horrible thing to say, bit on the vibrator. She took the bait. I'm so sorry. She took the bait on that joke.
Drink,
I'm like,
Sophia.
I have a coffee. I'll drink this. She took the bait on that, and then I think like the sort of shame and the desire to be liked. Then she leans into it and goes, okay, so my turn. Never have I ever. Oh no, I did that, and to make everyone laugh.
Yeah.
And that moment of saying it and then looking around to see if people thought it was funny, like seeing myself make that choice for her then really broke my heart.
Again, such good casting, because it would have been easy to do that. It just would have been easy to play it the other way.
Seductively. And you weren't
seductively
seductive.
and one-dimensional and just, but you really had that. You knew what you were doing.
Thanks.
Yeah. Listen, that's what I want viewers to do in this rewatch, is to question every choice. Like, was Brooke Davis really fast and easy? Like what is the reality of these things? Because what we're saying is one thing, but how we're behaving, that's what we were able to control.
Yeah.
We couldn't control the dialogue, but we could control how we said it.
How.
Yeah.
You're right. That's where we could find our power. Like, we couldn't get away from some of the things that were written for us to do, but there were moments where we could be more ourselves, moments where we could subvert the obvious. And I will say, it means so much to all of us, with all you listening at home. Those have always been the moments that the fans have loved the most. And I love that we were able to, even in the midst of trying to figure out what the hell we were doing, like find these moments.
I want to talk about Joy's hat.
Yes,
That's what I was
please.
gonna
say that. Can we talk about Haley's hat?
Okay, will you tell people what the backstory of the hat is? Come on.
Okay, look, here I have to preface this by saying that there is a possibility that I've created this scenario in my mind because I hated the hat so much. But
I don't think
what I remember, my recollection of this is that I was given this hat. I did not like this hat. I hated this hat. I was given this hat and told, you have to wear this hat. And I was told later that the person who chose the hat for me chose it because it looked like a penis hat, like the top of a penis.
It had
and
mushrooms
they thought it was
literally on it.
Yeah, and they thought it was funny to make Haley look like she was like had like a penis on her head. I hated that hat so much. I hated that hat.
Did they tell you this right away, Joy?
No, it was way later. It was way later because it would always pop up and we'd see images of it. Because it's like, I don't know why this hat keeps showing up. I see photos of it for years. I've seen like because it's so terrible. I think probably it's like
and also there's that beautiful scene with the two of you in the car. We've talked about it from Nathan's side, but the vulnerability that Haley leans into, and the softness that you gave her, and the humor and the cracking jokes, but also the bashfulness. It was so innocent and beautiful.
Bashful is the perfect word.
Right? She's bashful. And it happens in that friggin' hat. For a lot of it.
It all happens in that hat.
A lot of it happens in the hat. And then, you finally take it off on the car ride. But I think that's part of it, because that's where the seed of Nathan and Haley was planted, was in that friggin' hat.
Yeah.
Just right in the top of it.
Because the second you take the hat off, it's like she's all that, like you're a beautiful girl.
Mm-hmm.
Your chin in that car scene, Joy, just your little like chin dimple
little
and
cleft.
your little pout and your like your eyes, and you can tell that you're listening to him, like you're really listening. It is so like Ariel from Little Mermaid.
It is. And the
like
red hair.
They needed the hat to like dress you down, so it's not so on the nose and like, well, duh, these two are going to end up together. All they could do is put a stupid hat on.
It's like when they put Rachel Lee Cook in glasses.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it could have just been that, and then maybe the penis story came up later. I mean, who knows? I don't
But that
know
also
why.
could have been them like editing history, where after they watch it in dailies, they're like, "She looks like a dick," you know.
Yeah. It could have been. It could have been. But yeah,
when
I
does
did
the
love
poncho
that.
pop up? I remember them giving you shit about the poncho.
Yep.
That was the other thing, the poncho. I think I chose the poncho. I think that was my choice, my bad choice. I made some very questionable wardrobe choices throughout the years, but I guess it always kind of worked for Haley.
Ma'am, I was wearing a buckle across my chest in this episode. So tell me about it.
You got to keep those things locked up, honey.
My God, why?
Yeah.
Like, I buckled myself into my shirt for what?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
90s fashion left it like kept creeping into the 2000s.
Yeah, the tail end was really brutal.
I like that you and Sarah Edwards, who played Teresa, were kind of wearing the same thing. It was, you know, that like tells a story that all the cheerleaders have a uniform, and then they put Peyton in a turtleneck. So, you know, how can we be the antithesis of this?
Yeah.
It also kind of put Brooke in the queen bee category that
Yeah.
she was, and that like there was, it just subconsciously put a little like,
Oh,
these girls want to be like her, you know?
That's so interesting.
We had your cronies. Best crony of the episode goes to Tim. So.
Brett
Claywell. That
He really had that Joey Tribbiani thing going on.
Yes. He is so good. And like, we all thought he was so funny then, but as an adult to watch him, I'm like, man, his comic timing is just so on point. At the door, the entire physical nature of his comedy that ends with him weirdly just knocking on the house because he doesn't know what else to do is so brilliant. He takes my breath away.
But do you remember they always gave him the hardest job because we all had real lines. Like we had lines on a piece of paper that we were supposed to recite. And they would wait till the end of the day and get all of our coverage. And then they would get Brett's coverage and they'd give him 2 takes and they'd be like, all right, Brett, just improvise and
Do something
go.
funny. Go.
And it's everyone's standing there watching you. Like the sun is rising, you know, there's like a clock ticking and Brett would just have to go. And he's so good at it. He just knew who Tim was.
Yeah,
What a
he really
trooper.
got to hone
Yeah.
some skills on that. And by the way, skills, like the opening scene when we're at the basketball game and he's running, he does this like fake out dribble between his legs so seamlessly. I was like, oh my God, wait, Brett was like a really good basketball player. I forgot.
Yeah, I think they all were like legit basketball players, except for Chad, who was a football boy, right?
Yeah.
I guess so, yeah.
Did we talk about that in the last episode? This shot that he had to make in the court. I know we talked about it on our Zoom, but I don't know. I mean, yeah, that was tough for him because he was definitely a football guy, and you know, good at it from what I know, from what I heard. But it's just such a different. It's a completely different sport. It's a totally different skill set.
It'd be like if I had to do gymnastics. Like, I'm good at other stuff, guys.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, everything we did involved a ton of extras, like these big party scenes, the big basketball scenes, and we were all really young actors. So we were having to make decisions in front of a live audience on set, and then like hope that when it aired 2 weeks later, because our turnaround was so fast, that people liked it. Getting feedback that people didn't like Peyton it was so bad.
You got feedback that people didn't like Peyton?
Well, because remember, we were supposed to be a mid-season replacement. So we were supposed to bank all of our episodes before we ever aired. And then there was I want to say it was a Rachel Lee Cook show that Warner Brothers decided, like, you know what? This isn't ready. We're not going to do this right now. Let's just put One Tree Hill on in September. And we'd only been filming since July. So we'd only banked like 3 episodes when our show started airing.
That's right.
And very quickly the feedback came in like, what's this bitch so mopey about? You know? And I think maybe that was a blessing because it certainly made me aware of how I was being perceived, which put me right back in high school. Like, you're totally aware of what everyone around you is saying, the rumor mill. It was It was humbling.
It's hard too because we were young, and of course, I mean, gosh, as an adult, you want to be liked. As a kid, you want to be liked so badly, and you want to do a good job, and especially on our first jobs. And I remember that. I remember how uncomfortable it made me feel because Brooke was put in a position where she, granted, performatively and to try to feel any kind of validation because she didn't have it from her family, and you know all the aspects of her backstory, she was very sexualized. And then I felt like I was being very sexualized, and it made me so uncomfortable. This sort of like, this like, ooh, you're a bad girl. And I was like, I play this girl on TV, and I don't know who I am yet.
I remember that too, Sophia, because didn't a lot of the press that we started doing after the show, it was like you were always expected to be wearing the super short skirt, the big, the cleavage thing. Remember that photo shoot that we did that was like in a garbage dump or something? They like had.
And you hated that
What
shoot.
was that?
Joy hated that shoot.
Oh my God. Yes, no,
Joy was
that
like,
weird
we are
racetrack.
not trash.
Yeah.
I still have something up in my craw about it. Like, I'm so mad.
It was like we'd worked so hard to get here. Hard to get here. We did our first big photo shoot, and they
Go
put
stand
us
in
in a
miniskirts.
dump.
Yeah.
Joy,
Yeah.
I'm so glad you brought that
Yeah,
up.
like a salvage yard kind of a place.
But there was some that was like on a racetrack, and the racetrack was really cute, and that was fun stuff. And then they were like, come over here in short skirts and stand in front of a pile of trash. And I was like, no.
Yeah. By the way, Hilarie, do you remember we were side by side in one of those shots that day, and they handed you a hose, and you just like pointed it at the ground? They wanted you to be hosing me down.
What?
And you wouldn't do it, and I just like froze, and you were like, no. And I remember just looking around like, is this what's expected of me? And we didn't, obviously, like we didn't let them keep the water on. But like that idea, essentially they were like trying to shoot a wet t-shirt contest. And I was like, I don't want to do this at all. At all. Especially in a pile of trash.
The trash.
What a gross day at work.
Oh my
I
God.
had totally forgotten about that. And I'm so glad you brought it up
Oh
because
my
it is such a
God.
metaphor for how we were treated the whole time. Like, guys, we're going to give you a photo spread. It's going to be a cover. It's made of trash. Womp womp.